Welcome to Kicks and Minivans, the podcast for dads who love sneakers. I am your host, KG. However you're watching and listening, we thank you for hanging out and tuning in and joining us for a little bit. Hey, if you are, there's a new thing, I don't even know how I want to say it. There's a new feature that my distributor, I use a site called Spreaker.com to distribute my podcast to all of the Apple, Spotify, Google, all those things. They now have a feature where you can support your favorite podcast financially. You can financially back them. And it is all through their thingy hosting site. But there is a link down in the show notes. This is awkward. It's awkward to ask you for money. I'm not asking you for money. I am putting out an option. If you wish to financially contribute to the Kicks and Minivans podcast, there is an option for you to do so. This podcast will continue to go on no matter what. I believe in the work that God is calling me to. I believe in this podcast. God has renewed the vision for this podcast. It will keep moving forward. It will continue to push forward. There is an option if you wish to financially back and support this podcast. It is not a free thing for me to do. It's not a free hobby. It costs time. It costs money. It's not thousands of dollars an episode, right? Like, it doesn't cost that. But it does cost money on a monthly, yearly basis to keep this thing going. So if you wish to financially back and help with some of that, there is an option on Spreaker's site to do that. There's a link in the show notes down below. It is set at $10 a month. You can start it, stop at any time. There's no commitment, no contract, like nothing like that. And it will tell you that you'll get like access to exclusive behind the scenes content and stuff. I don't have that. Just straight up, I don't have any behind the scenes footage. There's no special bonus content. None of that right now. There is an option if you wish to support the work that is being done currently. You can go and you can subscribe to that. $10 a month. You can start and stop whenever you want to. Hey, if you choose to do that, that is a blessing. I thank you. I appreciate you. Love you guys. If you don't want to do that and you just want to listen, hey, I appreciate that. Every time you tune into an episode, that's support. Every time you share it on social media, that is support. Every time you text it or email it to a friend, that is support. I love it. Anytime you message me and tell me that you listen or you liked an episode, that's support. I feel like every week I learn of like a new demographic of audience. Like, I started this to help the millennial dad primarily. That was my target audience, was the millennial dad, my generation of dad. And I want to help men win in marriage and parenting. So specifically men, more specifically millennial dads. But it's like, we got single dudes that are not married, no kids that listen to this. We got single dads fighting for custody rights that listen to this. We got empty nesters that are trying to rebuild a relationship with their adult children that listen to this. We have wives and mothers that listen to this. Like, we got a wide demographic of people that listen to this. And it feels like every week, like I'm learning of someone new in some sort of different demographic than I expected that listens to this. And so thank you, love you, appreciate you. Now, we are going to continue in with the segments of KG's opinions, because I have a lot of them. Usually the show consists of some main teaching point or some interview. Right now, it's like, this isn't a lot of fact-based stuff the last couple of weeks. This is a lot of my opinions on stuff the last couple of weeks. And my opinion on this one is, y'all need to stop trash talking your spouse. Stop trash talking about your spouse, especially behind their back. And this is like a whole locker room banter thing. And I've just never felt like I can contribute to a conversation when this is taking place. And I know if you're married, you have been in a scenario where this has taken place, whether you participated in the conversation or not. You have been in a scenario where this has taken place, where people bash and complain about their significant other. And I've been in this type of situation. My wife has been in this type of situation. And I want to make a disclaimer. This is not, what I'm talking about in this episode is not, if your marriage is on the rocks, if you are having marital hardships, if you are really struggling in your marriage and you turn to a friend or a brother or a pastor or a therapist to vent to them, to seek guidance, encouragement, support, if you are looking for any of that, looking for advice, this is not what I'm talking about. Because those issues that you're talking about are probably bigger issues. What I'm talking about is the small nitpicky stuff that people will just bash about their spouse behind their backs to other people, usually men with other men, women with other women. If you're bashing your spouse to someone of the opposite sex, you are in a dangerous place, my friend. Like, if you're a dude bashing your wife, talking about her behind her back to your female coworker, you are in trouble. You better run, drop that, like, cut that off, stop it. Like, you're in a dangerous spot, bro. And same thing, if you're a woman listening and you are bashing your husband to that cute guy at work, like, cut it out. Stop it. You are in a very dangerous spot. But usually this type of stuff is happening. It's like a locker room banner thing, right? Where like it's just a bunch of dudes hanging around and it's like, oh yeah, my wife's nagging me again. My wife won't let me go out with the dudes. My wife this, my wife's spending all this money on Amazon. My wife wants to do this family thing this weekend. It's going to take all my time. I just want to watch the games. Like it's dudes bashing and complaining about their wives. And it might seem insignificant, right? Like it seems insignificant. But this has always bothered me because I never feel like I can contribute to the conversation. And a couple months ago, this really set me off because I was playing ball, and it's a good group of dudes that I play with, right? But we were going to go to B-Dubs later that night. We play early in the morning. We were going to go to B-Dubs later that night to watch some games, eat some wings, hang out. And someone was like, yo, dude, you going to be there? And he said, no, my wife won't let me go. And he's like an older dude, but he's like, nah, my wife won't let me go. And everyone's like, oh, ball and chain, ball and chain. There's probably like 6, 7 guys sitting around at this point, right? And I'm kind of like 10 yards off of them. Like they're all sitting on these bleachers and I'm like on the floor taking my shoes off. We had just finished playing for the day. And they're all like, ball and chain, ball and chain. And he's like, yeah, I know. She's holding me down. And there's this like 22, 23-year-old kid, single, sitting on the bleachers. And he goes, is that what marriage is like? And everyone's like, oh, yeah, you better get ready for it. And I very loudly, like, it set me off. It set me off, man. I very loudly, from like, 10, 15 yards away, went, nope, doesn't have to be. And everyone kind of shut up because it's like awkward. Because I feel like, this is a good group of dudes. I feel like they all realized like what they were doing wasn't quite okay. And it's setting a poor example too for this young dude that wants to get married one day, wants to have a wife, wants to have kids. Like it's kind of putting a bad taste in his mouth, and a taste that might not even really exist, but doesn't have to exist, right? And I know that it ain't just dudes doing this. Wives be doing the same thing. Like y'all be sitting wherever women hang out. Like y'all be sitting doing the same thing, chopping it up, start complaining about your husbands. He does do this, he doesn't do that, blah, 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 blah. Like he ain't fixed that toilet seat. He ain't put the toilet seat down. His clothes are on the floor next to the hamper, like not in the hamper. Like y'all complaining too. So it ain't just dudes, it ain't just females. It's like this is like a universal thing for like 90-something% of couples that y'all just like to talk about your spouse behind their back to other people. But y'all spouses would be set off if they knew that you said this stuff about them. They would be set off. But y'all don't have a problem doing it. And I've just gotten to a point where I like start calling people out. And maybe that makes me a prick. I don't know. Like I feel like here's my thing. I could contribute to the conversation. There are things that my wife does that annoy me. There are things that I do that annoy my wife. She could contribute to the conversation. I could contribute to the conversation. But here's the thing. Whatever she does that annoys me, when I get annoyed by it, I literally will stop and think like, yeah, but I know that this annoys her and she puts up with it. And again, these are small things, right? I'm not talking about like she racked up 30 grand of credit card debt behind my back. Like she's never done that. If that's a thing, that's not locker room banter. That is like y'all are in marriage counseling, right? I ain't talking about, she found out that he's watching porn 3 times a day. I ain't talking about that. Like if that happens, that's not just like hair salon gossip or whatever. I don't know where y'all talk about stuff. But like that's like y'all going to marriage counseling, right? I'm talking about the small stuff. And again, you're probably like, well, why are you making a big deal out of the small stuff? Because you're making a small deal out of big stuff. Because here's the thing that I believe to be true. When you participate in this type of trash talk about your spouse, the person that's supposed to be your favorite person in the world, this person that you're supposed to love and cherish and protect above everybody else, when you are trash talking them behind their back, you see what you focus on. You see what you focus on. When you are trash talking them, nitpicking all these things, you are going to focus on and see more of these flaws, more of these things that annoy you. If you choose to let those go, focus on the good things, the reasons that you love your spouse, the reason you fell in love with them, the reason you decided to marry them. When you see and you focus on those things, you start seeing more of those things, right? The Bible says that you will reap what you sow. And I believe that our words have power. I believe our thoughts have power. And so I am going to choose to control my thoughts. And like, hey, this might annoy me about my spouse, but if I dwell on that, that might really start driving a wedge between me and her. Whereas if I take that thought captive, choose to not dwell on it, choose to not participate in that locker room banter of bashing my wife behind her back to other dudes that may have never even met her. Come on. Just so you can like appear cool in one of the guys? Like, nah, skip that. Like, I'll lose all of y'all before I lose my wife. Y'all. Like, she's the most important person in the world to me. And I'd expect you to lose me in favor of your wife. And so you do not need to gain my respect by bashing your wife behind her back. Like, you don't got to do that. In fact, that makes you seem like less of a man to me. Now, because if someone else said that about your wife, you'd be ready to throw hands. If someone else said some of the stuff that I've heard dudes say about their wife, if someone else said that about her, you'd be ready to throw hands. You'd be done. You'd be throwing them up, bro. Come on. You know that. But you'll say it. And maybe that's like that sibling thing where like no one can mess with my brother but me. But like, when you say that stuff about your wife, you give others the permission to think that about your wife. And it's a cycle. And so, my word for you today, this is a short episode. My word for you today, stop focusing on the flaws of your partner. Focus on the good things. Consider the fact that what annoys you, you probably annoy them. It's a give and take thing. You can choose to overlook those things. And again, I'm talking about the small things. The big things, we don't just sweep those under the rug, right? Like if he leaves the toilet seat up, you might sweep that under the rug, right? Like if he's watching porn multiple times a day, you might need to talk about that one, right? But that's not locker room banter. That's like y'all sitting down with a pastor or a therapist, right? But start minimizing, not dwelling on those flaws. Don't trash talk your spouse. You reap what you sow. Sow the good things. Think the good thoughts. Say the good words. Focus on the reasons that you love your spouse. You chose your spouse. You chose to build a life with them. She is not a ball and chain. He is not overprotective. Like he is not trying to hold you down. She is not trying to hold you down and minimize your fun. Like y'all are in this together. Y'all are a team. Y'all are Y'all are one united soul. You don't need to bash your wife. You don't need to trash talk about your husband. You don't need to complain about them. Address the problems, the little things head on. Don't dwell on them. Don't make them a huge deal. You don't need to participate in the trash talk, the gossip about each other's spouses. You can set a difference. And I believe when you focus on the good things, you will continue to see more and more good things in your marriage. I love you guys. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. This is Kicks and Minivans.